Good morning, everybody. Get started in just a couple minutes here. Time is it? 7:38. Hello. Looks like we have about 11 people in here right now. Wait for a couple minutes so that we can get some more folks to join the lecture. Hello there, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in this morning. If you want to go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint for today, it's the same one that we started with last time. I still don't have the ability to screen share. I'm waiting for my credential. I can't install stuff unless they give me a credential to be able to install things on my work computer. So right now I don't have the ability to screen share yet. I do suspect that that will be resolved within the next week or so. But for now, you're just going to have to listen carefully as I go through the PowerPoint, and hopefully you can pull it up on your computer and just follow along as I go through. The entire class today will not be taken up with lecture because I'm going to give you time during class today to complete the assignment that I have ready to go for you guys. And again, thank you so much for everybody who's saying good morning and hello in the chat. That's always so nice to see. I'm not going to take attendance quite yet because we don't have everybody in here yet, but I will take attendance by the time that we leave. And I send you off to do the assignment for today. If you did not yet submit the assignment that was due for today, you do still have time to do that and to get full credit on it. Please make sure that you submit that assignment as soon as you can so that I can put it into the gradebook and keep everything nice and updated for you. So go ahead, if you have not done so already, go on to Canvas and open up the Files section. You will see in the Files section a folder that says Lecture PowerPoints. And in that lecture PowerPoints, you will see the Unit 1 PowerPoint. And thank you so much. Good morning to you all. So I am not going to waste 1 minute of time today. We're going to just jump right into the things that we need to talk about so that I can maximize the amount of time that you have to complete this assignment. And the assignment's very doable. It's going to relate to the things that I'm lecturing on today, as well as a short reading that I'm going to ask you to read first, and you can use in conjunction while you complete the assignment. And there's a number of questions pertaining to the reading and today's lecture. And it's all about ancient Greek democracy, which is where we left off last time. So let's talk a little bit about what we talked about last time. So one of the things that I mentioned to you guys last lecture on Wednesday was that the origins of democracy was last time's assignment, government in Athens. Yes, it was. Okay. Actually, wait. No, that one's today's assignment. It'll say day 1, day 2. Just follow that. Okay. So last time what we were talking about was we were talking about ancient Greece and the origins of democracy. Now, one of the things to keep in mind about democracy is that it's a governmental system that really went for a very long time in history not being used after the fall of the Roman Empire. And we haven't started talking about Rome yet. Greece comes first, and both Greece and Rome, for a while at least, use different kinds of democracy. And that's one of the things that gets a little bit confusing, but we're going to clear that up today throughout the lecture, is that not all democracies look the same. Each democracy across the planet and throughout history kind of takes on its own unique characteristics. So, but they have some commonalities as well. So the idea behind democracy being that power rests with the people. We talked about that last time. It comes from 2 Greek words, demos meaning people and kratos meaning power. So people have the power through voting in a democracy. However, not all democracies look identical to one another. For example, if we were to talk about the American democracy, the democratic system that we have here in the United States, the democracy that we have here in the United States is one where when we show up at the polls, we vote for people. We vote for representatives. And those representatives are then sent off to whatever capacity that they serve. They could be the president, they could be a senator, they could be a member of the House, or they could be any number of other positions for, all the way down the line. It could be a national representative, somebody who serves at the national level. We could vote for a state representative, so we vote for state senators for our local districts. We also vote for other things like the governor of California, for example, or we vote for mayors, we vote for sheriffs, we vote for all sorts of different positions. But we're always voting on people. Now in Greece, they didn't vote for representatives. They didn't have that kind of democracy. And the kind of things that they voted on were issues. Now, laws, okay? So now sometimes here in the state of California, we have an unusual exception that many states don't have, which is that sometimes when you show up to the polls, and I know that you guys are in 10th grade and you're not able to vote yet. However, one of the things that you should probably be mindful of as you approach voting age is that when you show up to the polls in California, you will be able to vote on state propositions. Now, a proposition is when an issue is put out to the people to vote on. And usually this was an issue that was unable to get through the California state legislature. All that legislative means is lawmaking. So when we say legislature, we're talking about the body of lawmaking within the state of California. But anyhow, most states, you don't show up and vote on issues. And frankly, even in California, we don't really vote on all the issues. We only vote on a very small number of them that end up going out and becoming props or propositions on the ballot. And there have been some very important ones in the last however many years. that can have a significant impact on state laws and practices. But nonetheless, when we're voting directly on issues, that's a form of direct democracy. Now, for the most part here in the United States, we do not have a direct democracy, okay? And there's reasons that we don't have a direct democracy, which I'll get into in a little bit. But in Greece, particularly in Athens, remember that Greece was divided into a bunch of small city-states. So you had Athens, you had Sparta, you had a whole litany of different small city-states. But Athens' democracy was a direct democracy. But keep in mind also that the democracy that Greece had, and I specifically am referring to Athens, okay, the democracy in Athens is not as complete of a democracy that we have here in the United States. Here in the US, anyone who's a citizen and who is of legal voting age is able to show up at the polls and vote. So we have a very large number of people here in the United States who are able to participate in democracy, all right? In Athens, keep in mind that Athens is very, 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 very small. Even if you took the entire population of Athens, okay, it would be way, way, way fewer people than we have here in the United States. We have 310 or 20 million people here in the United States. That's a whole lot of people, okay? That is a huge population. And Athens does not have a huge population. Now, in Athens, because they have a small population, direct democracy works a little bit better. But even still, think about this. In Athens, even though they had a much smaller population, not everyone could vote. It's not like here where you could be a citizen and of legal age and then you can vote. That's not how it worked in Athens. In Athens, there were very, very strict restrictions on who could participate in the democratic process, who actually had the ability to show up and vote. Okay, so in Athens, we're going to talk about why the Athenian democracy was much more limited than the American democracy. Okay, go ahead and, if you have not done so, please go ahead and pull up that PowerPoint so you can follow along with me. Remember, I'm still waiting for the ability to share my screen with you guys. I don't have the software installed that allows me to do that until they give me the permission to install it at the district. Okay, so pull it up, pull the PowerPoint up, and we're going to go to slide number, let's see here, 7. We're going to slide number 7 where it says types of government, okay? Types of government. Slide number 7 on the PowerPoint. The PowerPoint, again, is available on the Files section in the Lecture PowerPoints folder on Canvas. I'll say that one more time. Go to Canvas, log into the course, then you're going to click on Files, then you're going to click on the folder that says Lecture PowerPoints, and then you're going to open up the Unit 1 PowerPoint. All right. Remember, at any time, you are able to pause, rewind. Even though I'm doing this live, you're able to pause it, rewind, and then continue playing it if you so choose. If you're up to speed, let's go ahead and get started right now. So, types of government. Now, Athens became the largest and most powerful city-state in Greece. I told you last time that Athens was a port city, which meant that they had a powerful navy and they were engaged in a lot of trade. And because of this, Athens became very populous, but also very culturally refined comparative to perhaps some of the other areas of Greece. Each year in Athens, an assembly of citizens would elect 3 nobles to rule Athens. And remember what a noble is. That is a high-ranking citizen in society. That's a person who probably, of the entire society, nobles may be made up about 1% to 2%. So it's a very, very, very select number of people. in society in Athens at that time. Now, by about 600 BC, that's 600 years before Jesus, Athens was facing some pretty serious economic troubles. They had racked up a whole lot of debt, and there were a lot of poor farmers who were being exploited by the system of government that was in Athens at that time. So what we start to see are a number of leaders that come to power in Athens. And we call these leaders reformers of Greece. So now I'm going to move on to slide 8 of the PowerPoint. Now, what does a reformer do? When we talk about reform, we're simply talking about change, okay? And today we have reforms that are made all the time, okay? And sometimes reforms have to be made. If we look at recent days with the coronavirus, there have been a number of different reforms that have been put in place, dealing with public safety, of wearing masks and trying to prevent the spread of the illness, and so on and so forth. So reforms are simply changes that a government puts into place. And sometimes we need change because situations call for new solutions to be able to resolve problems in society. And that's why we do governmental reform. So what does a reformer do? They change the government. And I'm going to be now talking about 3 different reformers in Greece. And this is essentially what your assignment is going to be about today. Democracy in Athens, and then also some of the changes that these reformers made. So let's move on to now slide 9 of the PowerPoint. And that is going to be talking about the reforms of the first reformer that we're going to talk about, and his name is Solon. So in 594, Solon, who was a statesman, and all a statesman is essentially a noble politician, okay, a public figure of sorts. And so Solon passed a law that outlawed slavery based on debt. Now, I had mentioned in the previous slide that there were a number of farmers who were being exploited for their labor to try to pay debts back. And one of the things that used to be common back in the olden days is that if you went into Victoria, I just saw your message right now. Don't worry about that. Remember that these videos are recorded onto YouTube. So if you missed the first little part, you can go back and rewatch it on your own time. Okay, so, but I'm just going to continue here with the PowerPoint. Don't worry, I haven't taken attendance yet, but I will make sure to do that before we leave today. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. Back in the olden days, and this actually was a relatively long-standing practice, is that if you were a poor person, say a farmer, okay, or a peasant of some sort, and you racked up a bunch of debt, what they could do is they could actually make you essentially a slave. And this is in Athens, okay? Now, they stopped the practice of making people slaves, but even all the way up to the early days of the United States, one of the things that they could do if you got into a lot of debt was they could put you into prison. These days, if you get into a lot of debt, you're not going to go to prison. But you're going to feel like you're in prison because your life is going to be miserable if you're in a lot of debt. So you can't actually be physically thrown in jail anymore for not paying your debts. But back in the olden days, that was a pretty regular practice. And back in Athens, they could quite literally make you a slave. So Solon changed that. What he did was he outlawed slavery that was based on debt, and he actually even canceled the farmer's debt. So that's one of the major changes or reforms that Solon makes. Another reform that Solon made was that he created 4 classes of citizenship that were based on wealth instead of heredity. Back in the olden days, your citizenship in Athens was exclusively determined by your birth. So if you were born into a noble family, you were a noble. If you were born into a peasant family, you were a peasant. What Solon does is he starts to change some of this around to say, we're not going to be dividing up society just based on your birthright. We're instead going to be dividing up citizenship based on your wealth. And one of the things that he does is he creates this thing called the Council of 400. And this was 400 members of the upper echelons of Greek society who would help to make decisions to this very select small assembly of voting citizens. So this Council of 400 was an advisory council. They were meant to help advise the assembly making all of the governmental decisions on the best route to take, okay, the best decisions to make. So the Council of 400, think of it almost like a group of people from different walks of life who would get together and make suggestions to the governmental assembly, which was only a handful of people, on the kinds of changes that they should make. All right, move on to the next slide there. Another one of the reforms of Solon in his time as a Greek reformer was he said that all free adult males would be considered citizens. Now, here's the thing about that. You might think that that's a relatively large number of people, but remember that back in ancient Greece, slavery was still quite common. Okay, now the kind of slavery that I'm talking about really isn't anything similar to the slavery that you might first think of when you think of that word of the Atlantic slave trade in the 15 and 1600s. In other words, the African populations that were brought over from Africa to the New World, North America, Central America, South America, and then forced to perform slavery. I'm not really talking about that kind of slavery. The kind of slavery that Athens practiced was not like that. They didn't really do the same kinds of tasks that slaves from a more recent era performed. And the work was also not as grueling and as horrible as the slavery of the 15, 16, 17, and early 1800s. Okay, but nonetheless, let's get back to this. All free adult males were considered citizens, but there's still a good number of slaves in Athens at this time. And keep in mind that whenever we look anywhere at any population, half of that population is going to be males and half of that population is going to be females, roughly. All right, why is that significant? Because if only all free adult males are citizens, that means immediately half of your population is not allowed to participate in the democratic process. So already we're seeing a very limited form of democracy in Greece. But the reforms that Solon makes nonetheless widen the democratic process so that more males can participate in it than before. So keep in mind that only 10% of the population of Athens were actually even considered citizens at all. Okay, so there were no women, there were no slaves, there were no foreigners that could be considered a citizen to participate in this democratic process. Not to mention 33%, roughly a third of the population of Athens was slaves. That's a huge number. So again, we're cutting down significantly on the number of people that we have participating in democracy in Athens at that time. So we have to remember that even though Solon helped to increase participation in government by widening it to make all free adult males citizens, it's still a very limited democracy. Okay, let's move on to slide 11. There's an image there. We don't have any photographs, obviously, of Solon. Photography wasn't invented until the mid-1800s. And so, the best we have are ancient statues, busts of these people. But that is a bust of Solon. Moving on to slide 12 now. Reforms of Klystenes is how you say that guy's name, Klystenes. Okay, Klystenes is going to be the next major reformer that we talk about in today's lecture. And in 508 BC, Klystenes expanded on the reforms that Solon made and expanded democracy in Athens. And he helped the balance between the rich. He helped to balance the power a bit between the rich and the poor. Now, all the way going back, note that we're now in 508 BC. Why are those numbers getting smaller? It seems like they should be getting bigger perhaps to you, but remember, because we're in BC, if we were dealing with a number line, we're essentially dealing with negative numbers. So if you noticed that in the slide on Solon, that he was in 594 BC, that was roughly 80 or 90 years before Klystenes came into power. So we are moving forward in time. We're not moving backward in time. Okay, we are just in BC years, which is basically like negative years in a sense. Okay, so in 508 BC, Klystenes helped to expand democracy in Athens, and he also was trying to help balance the power between the really wealthy parts of society in Athens and the poorer parts of society in Athens. And one of the ways in which he did this was he expanded the Council of 400 to now be the Council of 500, which would actually now be able to propose laws and even assist the assembly. It wasn't just a council, an advisory council anymore. It was increasing the responsibilities and the role of this council, as well as widening the number of people who participated in this council. Now, even after Klystenes, even after the reforms that Klystenes makes, still only 20% of the population are considered citizens, and of those folks, only half of them were male. So we still have a relatively limited democracy, even after Klystenes makes some of the changes that he makes. And if you go on to slide 13, you'll see yet another Greek bust of these reformers, this one being Klystenes. Okay, now let's move on to slide 14. Slide 14 talks about the reforms of the third and final major reformer of Greece, of particularly Athens, okay? And his name is Pericles. So let's talk, now Pericles came almost immediately after Klystenes did. Notice that with Klystenes, we were in 506 BC, we're now in 490 BC. So that only separates them by about 15 or 16 years. Now, from 490 to 479 BC, the Greek city-states became engaged in a war with the Persians. And the Greek city-states, which typically were very used to going to war with one another, actually realized that in order to defeat the Persians, which were a much larger force coming from the north, that they were going to have to ally with one another to win this war. And Pericles led Athens, I'm sorry, I read the year wrong. Pericles comes about 50 years, not 15 years after Klystenes does. So Pericles led Athens from 461 to 429 BC, shortly after the Persian War, with the Greek city-states allying with one another. Now, one of the changes that Pericles makes, one of the reforms that Pericles makes, was that he started to pay public officials. Now, you might think to yourself, well, if these folks are already wealthy, all right, and they're at the upper echelons of society, and they're serving government, why would you pay them? Aren't you just making the rich richer? Actually, no. The interesting thing about why it's important to pay government officials is because when you pay government officials, it actually allows for people who don't have money to be able to serve in the capacity as a public official. See, if you were to make it so that the position, keep in mind, being a politician is a full-time job, okay? And so if you're working full-time but you're not collecting a salary for it, that would necessitate that you were super, super wealthy in order to serve in that position. No one who was poor would ever be able to be a politician if they weren't paid for it, because you have to be wealthy to be able to support yourself from other means. while you're performing this full-time job as a politician. So the reason that Pericles introduces a salary, a wage for these government officials is to hopefully allow people who may not make as much money or may not have as much money from other business dealings that they do, to be able to enter into politics and to collect a salary from performing a job in politics. Okay, so that's why it's important to pay public officials. And under Pericles, this is the most important change really that we're going to be talking about today. Athens turns into a direct democracy. And what we see in a direct democracy is where citizens with the ability to vote then show up and vote directly on laws. Okay, and that is a major difference from the kind of government that, or democratic government that we have in the United States. We don't vote directly on laws. Like I said, with the exception of California and just a limited number of propositions that every so often pop up, we don't vote on laws. We vote on people to go and make the laws for us. We vote on representatives. So here in the United States, we do not have a direct democracy. We have a representative democracy. All right, but Pericles introduces a direct democracy in Athens. And what that means is that the citizens were able to rule to an extent. And remember, not everybody's a citizen, okay? Citizenship is kind of a privileged position within Athens, but citizens rule and make laws directly instead of elected representatives. And if you move on to the next slide, once again, you can see an ancient Greek bust of Pericles. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Things don't go very well for the Greek city-states over the course of the next couple hundred years. The demise of Greece. Basically, we're talking about the fall of Greece right now. The two strongest city-states that emerge after the Persian War are Sparta and Athens. But the Spartans and the Athenians don't particularly get along with one another. They looked past their differences for a short time when they allied with one another to engage in a war with the Persians. But after that war was over with, they kind of go back to not liking one another. And they have very different societies, whereas Athens was on the coast and they had a powerful navy and a very cosmopolitan society for their time and a democratic government. Sparta does not. Sparta is further inland. Sparta has a very militaristic society. It's a very harsh society. It's also much smaller than Athens. Even though they were very, very, very powerful, they had a much smaller population. And they don't have the same level of culture, okay, in Sparta. It's a very rigid militaristic society that was very, very, very difficult, very hardcore, all right? But it allowed them to raise children from the time that they were essentially infants up into extremely powerful warriors. Well, there's a new war that breaks out, and it's essentially kind of a civil war almost. It's a war between these two Greek city-states, and they call it the Peloponnesian War. And this war ultimately weakened both Athens and Sparta. They were really interesting competitors against one another because they specialized in different things. Whereas Athens had a powerful navy, a water power. In other words, they had ships and other things like that that they used to engage in conflict. Sparta had a really powerful army, a land military. And so it was an interesting battle. They kind of went in circles for a long time, and the Peloponnesian War significantly weakened both Sparta and Athens. And while both of these nations were warring with one another, that's when the Macedonians, who were further north, realized, hey, Sparta and Athens are fighting with one another. They've become very weak from fighting for years. Now's our time to swoop in and invade and defeat both of them. So the Macedonians invaded Greece and they defeated both city-states. And that was essentially the fall of the Greek Empire. On the next slide, you can see just a kind of a simple map. The reason it was called the Peloponnesian War is because there is a peninsula called the Peloponnesian Peninsula, and you can see it on the map there in green. And you can see kind of, if you zoom, I know it's kind of hard to see, but you can see where Athens is and where Sparta is, regionally there. Athens is right along the coast. You can see Sparta is in that red circle there in the middle, kind of further inland. And so the Peloponnesian War is between Athens and Sparta. And you can see up to the north there, Macedonia. And that's where they attacked from. They came down south through Greece and ended up conquering both Athens and Sparta. Okay, so that essentially brings me to the end of what I wanted to lecture on today, but we are not done yet. Just because the lecture ends doesn't mean that class is over. I have an assignment for you that is available already right now on Canvas. You just go to Canvas, go to the course, click on assignments, and you'll see day 2, whatever it's called, assignment. All right, and that's the one that is assigned for today. That assignment will be due on Monday. Now, a couple of things about that. Remember that you have a due date and you have a close date. You want to make sure that you're getting those assignments in by the due date. Now, I have been deliberately setting the due dates at 11:59 p.m. That's to try to give everybody the best opportunity to hand their work in on time and make sure that you're getting full credit. Today, you had an assignment due. If you haven't yet submitted this assignment, please make sure that you do this as soon as possible so that I'm able to update your grade in a short bit here. Okay, if you're not done with today's assignment, please make sure that you complete it and submit it by later on today. If I leave school today, this afternoon, and your assignment hasn't been added, but you add it by 11:59 p.m., when I come back on Monday, I will make sure to add your assignment and give you full credit for it. If you don't submit your assignment by 11:59 p.m. today, the one that was due for today, not the one that you're going to be working on right now, that one's due on Monday, okay, but the one that I assigned you on Wednesday, if you don't turn that one in by 11:59 p.m. today, it will be counted as late credit, which is a maximum of 80%. You will have 1 week from today to submit that assignment if it is late. But after that, when the assignment closes, you take a 0 on it. So please stay on top of the work that you're doing each and every day here. And that's why I'm giving you now a pretty solid, what time is it, 8:15? You're going to have essentially 45 minutes now to sit and get this done. So there really shouldn't be much excuses as to why you don't have this assignment complete on time. So please do get this completed, and I will add it to the grade book when I return on Monday. Before we sign off here, though, we have 30 people in here. I want to make mention of a couple of different things. All right, before I send you to do this assignment. Okay, a couple of things. There have been a couple of hiccups with this class dealing with. It's part STEM students and it's part non-STEM students, and as a result of that, some people who are particularly the non-STEM students have had difficulty accessing the class. If you have not been able to access the class, or if you know of somebody who's in this class and has not been able to access it, please have them email me. I have sent invites to people who were not able to access the class, and you should be able to add the course on Canvas with absolutely no problem. So please take note of that. Arnav, there's only 2 assignments on there. There's only 2 assignments. There's one that says day 2, and then there's the one that we did last class. So I don't know how that, I don't know what to tell you about that. You should there's only 2 assignments. There's the one that's for today, that I'm literally assigning you today. And then, wait a second. Chapter 11, question 1 through 21. That's the assignment for Euro. Files, courses, you're in world history, right? You go to world history, you click on assignments, And there should be a thing that says, yeah, Sheree, the chapter 11, question 1 through 21, that's for AP Euro. We're doing world history right now. No, so there's only 2 assignments on there: government in Athens, and then day 2, democracy in Athens. I know they have similar names, but it's focusing on different things. Yeah, Sheree. Yeah, no problem. Sheree, yeah, that assignment is for Euro, just so that you know. No one in world history will be able to see that assignment. Okay, so anyhow, let's do this really quickly before I send you to do this. We're going to take attendance, and the way that we're going to take attendance today is, I want to know. What do I want to know today? I want to know if you have a pet. Okay, if you have a pet, what kind of pet do you have? And what is your pet's name? Now, if you don't have a pet, I want to know what would be your ideal pet if you could have one. Type your answers, and that's what I'm going to use to take attendance today. Go for it. My sister has a dog named Lily too. How funny is that? Cool. That'd be awesome to ride a T-Rex to school, Arnav. I would love that. What's a Jindo? Oh, by the way, Ludicrous556, who is that? Tell me what your name is so that I know who you are. You have a dog named too? That's cool. Brendan, okay, thanks. Samoyed dogs are cool. Ideal pet dog. A pug named Monster. That's a cool name. A horse named Spirit. Wow, horse. That's a big pet. That's awesome. I have 2 cats. Mochi and Harrison. Those are my cats' names. And they're awesome. I love my cats. Make sure that you say something in here so that I can mark you as being here today. Even if you don't have a pet or whatever, make sure you at least say something so that I can mark you as here. Angie, thank you. A dog named Muffy. 9 quails and a fish named Lewis. I do not have a pet, but my ideal pet would be a Yorkie named Coco. That's a good name for a Yorkie. A dog named Tank. What kind of dog? I hope it's a big dog. I feel like if you're going to have a dog named Tank, it's got to be like a giant Mastiff or something like that. Beagle named Dodger. No, he's small. That's cool. That's even better, actually. Oh, that's funny. Cool. All right, folks. So everybody should be able to now see those assignments on Canvas. Get started on those. All right, go ahead and get started on those. You can probably, if you're reading quickly enough and you're typing quickly enough, make sure that you're typing your answers out in full sentences. You know, try and practice good academic habits for a 10th grader. Alaskan Malamute, those are big dogs. Those are cool dogs. Any dog, yeah, absolutely. The thing about a dog, you know, you get a dog, it doesn't matter what the dog is because you're just going to love that dog, you know. Dogs are great pets. So, all right, folks, get started on that, and I'm going to go ahead and end the stream here, and I will see you guys back here on Monday morning. Wait, is it Monday morning? No, Tuesday morning. It'll be due on Tuesday, okay? Because I forgot the days are switched around next week. So it'll be due on Tuesday morning. And yes, Michael, like I said, I have 2 cats, Mochi and Harrison. Maybe I'll post a picture of them sometime. All right, guys, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday morning. All right, take care.